without having to keep the law. Jennifer, we know that already. Stay focused. You guys got it? Had Genesis 12 said explicitly, Abraham had faith and was credited, he would have quoted Genesis 12. In other words, the only passage that Paul could have quoted is Genesis 15:6. It's not because Paul assumed that Abraham was not justified until Genesis 15. That's not his point. But White is too stupid and blind by his tradition. The only passage he could quote is Genesis 15, but him quoting that doesn't mean Paul thought that Abraham didn't have justifying faith earlier. That's a misreading of Genesis 15. You with me there? You guys understand now the issue? Because he knew this would be their burial, because he's going to say, number one, this is Torah. This is Torah. It's law of Moses. I'm quoting Moses, the law of Moses. Number two, it's our father Abraham. And here in the Torah of Moses, our father is said to have been declared, made righteous because of faith, and this faith was pleasing to God without Abraham even knowing about the law of Moses. You get it now? Did it now make sense? Stuck for about this guy, poor guy. So why did Paul quote it? What other text could he quote to prove that God justifies those who are faithful, and that faithfulness will be seen and displayed by obeying whatever command God gives you? And if he gives you instructions to follow and you follow wholeheartedly, then God will then reward you with justification. And those commands are not bound just to the law of Moses. Whatever commands he issues at any time, keep them and you'll be justified. So before the law of Moses, Abraham proved faithful to do what God told him to do. And during the time of Moses, you prove faithful by doing what God told you to do through Moses. And now you prove faithful by doing what Christ tells you to do. I'm going to break it down again before I read the rest of it. Okay. Paul's point isn't that Abraham wasn't justified. That's an argument from silence, number one. Just because it doesn't say it explicitly doesn't mean he wasn't. Paul's point is to show a clear passage from the Torah to those who insist faithfulness comes about by obeying the law of Moses. Otherwise, you cannot be faithful if you do not observe the law. The only way you can be faithful to God is keeping the law of Moses. There is no other way to be faithful except keeping the law of Moses. Paul's point is that's a lie. Faithfulness doesn't come only from keeping the law of Moses, because if you argue that, then how was our father Abraham faithful to God when there was no law of Moses for him to keep? And we know he was faithful long before the law of Moses, because Genesis, Moses' law tells us. That's his point. You understand his point? That's his point. Does everyone get his point? Because now I'm going to show you something bad and we're going to end it quick. Okay, so we got it, right? That's why Abraham's the father of the Jews who get circumcised. and the father of Gentiles who don't get circumcised, because Abraham becomes an example of a Gentile whom God declared and made righteous by trusting God without the law, because Abraham wasn't a Jew. There were no Jews. Abraham came before Israel. There were no Israelites. He was a Gentile. You see the brilliance of Paul? Some of you are so hung up on Abraham being a Jew that you fail to realize he wasn't ethnically Jewish. There were no Jews. He's the father of Israel, the Jews. He was a Gentile. He was a son of Eber, a son of Arphaxad, a son of Shem. He was a Gentile, not an Israelite. And so he is a hope for Gentiles, like this Gentile was made righteous by being faithful to God. You Gentiles can also be made righteous by being faithful to the same God, by obeying what he tells you to do. And God tells you Gentiles, you don't need to keep circumcision. How many of you guys are shocked to understand? How many of you are shocked to understand? Like this whore, Paul Lapel, son of a whore, thinks that Turton fan is refuting us. Tell Turton to bait us because we'll bury him and your false doctrine, you son of a whore. Come on, join me on my live stream. Here, I'm going to give you the link. Paul Lapel, you son of the whore of Babylon. I'm going to give you the link right now. Let's see if you're more man. Right? You the link. Here you go. Here you go, you son of a whore. Watch her. Here you go. Here's the link to my StreamYard. Show up right now. You son of the whore of Babylon. You son of Martin Lucifer. You whore of Satan. Join me now. Paul LaChapelle. You son of Martin Lucifer. You son of the whore of Babylon. You filthy Bible butcher. You Satanist. You filthy demon. I just sent you the link. Don't manifest in the comment section, you son of Satan. Here, I'm going to send it to you even in private. You dog, son of Satan. Don't be giving me Turton fans blog, whom we've obliterated. We're going to destroy again in our justification debate. You wicked, vile son of Satan. Show up, you coward. You got 5 minutes to do so. So I can bury you and Turton fan, 2 at the price of 1. You filthy coward. You the link. Son of Satan, cowards. Hide behind links because they're not men enough to debate. And you wonder why Jay Dyer treats you dogs the way you do. All right, now, guys, let's go here. Now, remember, I'm going to now make my case systematically. You got 5 minutes, you son of Satan. The Lord rebuke you and crush you to repent. The rest of you. James White believes Hebrews is Paul's sermon that Luke wrote down in Greek. He just has Paul contradicting himself. Why? All right. Paul, who said, Genesis 15:6, Abraham believed God and was credited to him as righteousness, right? So God rewards Abraham by crediting his faith as righteousness. But Paul told me in Hebrews 11:6, watch here, Hebrews 11:6, now without faith, it is impossible to please him. For the one who approaches God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. Now, if I ask Paul LaChapelle, the son of Martin Lucifer, the son of the whore of Babylon, tool of Satan, what is the reward that you receive if you have faith that pleases God? What would this son of Satan tell me? This coward who does a hit and run, and cowards end up in hell in Revelation 21:8. What is the reward that God will give you if you have faith that pleases him? What would he tell me, guys? Yeah, Dylan's one of us. Take it easy. Tell me, guys, so we can wrap it up and get ready for part 7. Akil, your mother's a Shia whore, even though you pretend to be a Sunni, and your mother mounts you, and your uncle mounts you, and the Shia mount your mother, she's mounting you. Okay? You incestuous bastard, son of a Shia prostitute. What would he reward him with? All right. Ryan, you got it. Now watch here. Did Abraham have that faith already, according to Paul? By faith. What kind of faith? By faith. The faith that you need to please God. And if you don't have this faith, it's impossible to please God. The faith that God will then reward. When did he have it, Paul? Jimmy White, Jamila, this is Paul according to you. Paul LaChapelle, you son of Satan, we're waiting. By faith, Abraham obeyed. Oh, what is faith? Faithful obedience. When he was called to go out to a place he would later receive as an inheritance, and went out without understanding where he was going. Oh, he was already pleasing to God in Genesis 12. If he was already pleasing to God in Genesis 12, that means he had saving faith. If he already had it, that means God would have already rewarded him. What's hard to get? Hold on. And did he remain in that state of pleasing God because of faithful obedience throughout his life? Yep. By faith, he lived as a foreigner in the promised land, as though it were a foreign country, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, who were fellow heirs of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with firm foundations, whose architect and builder is God. By faith, even though Sarah herself was barren and he was too old, he received the ability to procreate, because he regarded the one who had given the promise to be trustworthy. So in fact, children were fathered by one man, and this is one as good as dead, like the number of stars in the sky and like the innumerable grains of sand on the seashore. Guess what he did, folks? He now combined Genesis 12 and 15 together. But Jamila White told me it was only in Genesis 15 that Abraham exhibited that faith in a covenantal relationship, which God credited as faithfulness. But Paul says, no, that same faith of Genesis 15 was already at hand and displayed in Genesis 12. Say what? You guys caught it? You're kidding me. Genesis 15:15. Really? Read it in Genesis 22:17. So wait, Abraham had the faith that pleased God, the faith that God rewards in Genesis 12, Genesis 15, Genesis 22 throughout his entire life? And Jamila, Paul preached this, which Luke wrote down, you Bible butcher, by faith, right? Numeral grains of sand on the seashore. These all died in faith without receiving things promised, but they saw them in the distance and welcomed them and acknowledged that they were strangers and foreigners on the earth. For those who speak in such a way, make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. In fact, if they had been thinking of the land that they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Wait, hold on, wait. You mean they showed true faith that God delighted in, that pleased God, which God rewards, when they left their homeland, which Abraham did in Genesis 12, before Genesis 15? Yeah, Pedro, Genesis 22 is alluded to here. I just showed you. Are you guys reading this or? Here, again. These all died in faith without receiving the things promised, but they saw them in distance because they're looking to a heavenly city, which they're now in because of Christ. Welcome them and acknowledged that they were strangers and foreigners on the earth. So when they acknowledge we're living in Canaan as strangers because we're looking to that heavenly hope, and by faith we have abandoned our home. For those who speak in such a way, make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. In fact, if they had been thinking of the land that they had left, they would have opportunity to return. But as it is, they aspire to a better land, that is a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Wait, oh my goodness. You mean when Abraham left his homeland, showing that he had that faith that pleased God, which God rewarded by then calling himself the God of Abraham? How the hell are you going to tell me he wasn't already justified in Genesis 12 in light of this? No, it's Sola Fide and Tota Fide. See that, Louis, Marcus, everyone else, Derek, Echo, and Raga? I haven't forgotten you guys. So let me get this straight. God was not ashamed to call himself their God when they showed the faith that pleased God and proved their faith by then leaving their homeland, which is what Abraham did in Genesis 12. But according to White, just because it's not explicitly stated, that faith is what God credits righteousness until Genesis 15. Therefore, we can't use this argument. Yes, that's in Hebrews 11:7. Did you understand, Chairo, everyone else, what faith is in Hebrews 11? It's obedience. If you want more proof that faith, according to the Bible, is faithful obedience, all throughout the chapter, it's talking about what they did. Faith is what they do. Faith is what they did. By faith, Noah built an ark. By faith, Abel gave a better sacrifice. Right? By faith, Abraham offered a... Wait, so according to Hebrews 11, Abraham had saving, justifying faith that pleased God, that delighted God, which God would reward. In Genesis 12, Genesis 15, Genesis 22. But according to White, whose sermon is this? Paul's. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. That's Genesis 22. He had received the promises, yet he was ready to offer up his only son. God had told him through Isaac, descendants will carry on your name. And where did he say this? Genesis 21:12. Oh, so he had justifying, saving faith throughout his life. It seems like the Catholic Church, Orthodox Church, got it right. You're justified by your faithfulness, and you maintain your justification through your faithful obedience. This is Catholic, Orthodox salvation, justification, not the Protestant lie of Martin Luther. God had told him through this, your Isaac descendants will carry on your name. He said that also in Genesis 17, right? And he reasoned that God could even raise him from the dead, and in a sense, he received him back from there. So who's butchering Paul and contradicting Paul? If you have it, James White, Paul just contradicted himself. Cesar, get the hell out of here. I didn't ask you to come. I'm going to block you. See? All right. We caught it? Now here's Genesis 12. You tell me if God doesn't give a similar promise that he expands later on, which Abraham already believed, similar to Genesis 15. Genesis 12, 1-8. You ready? Let me see here. Watch it. And then I'm going to end it with Phineas. And Lord willing, part 7, it's going to get worse. Okay. Now the Lord said to Abraham, go out from your country, your relatives, and your father's household, to the land that I will show you. Then I will make you into a great nation. And I'll bless you, and I'll make your name great, so that you will exemplify divine blessing. I'll bless those who bless you, but the one who treats you lightly I must curse, so that all the families of the earth may receive blessing through you. Wait, I'm going to make you a great nation? So Abraham left, just as the Lord had told him to do. So he obeyed. Oh yeah, but he's still not justified, dude. No, man, he didn't justify. No. and Lot went with him. Now Abraham was 75 years old when he departed from Haran, and Abraham took his wife Sarai, his nephew, Lot, and all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people had acquired. Notice what faith is: doing, obeying, faithful obedience, the obedience of faith. Romans 1:5. Let all the possessions they had accumulated and the people they had acquired in Haran, and they left for the land of Canaan. They entered the land of Canaan. Seeing it, guys, with your own eyes? Abraham traveled through the land as far as the oak of tree of Mamre at Shechem. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abraham and said, to your descendants, wait, descendants, I'll give this land. He already made the promise of Genesis 15 and Genesis 12. So I'm going to ask you a question. Let me get rid of these notes. Hold on. Who's butchering the Bible and who's contradicting Paul? This Bible pervert. Watch here. With your own eyes, dude. Watch here. Okay? Watch here. I'll make you a great nation. To your descendants I'll give this land. So Abraham built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. Now Abraham believed this, right? How do we know he believed? Because he acted upon his faith and did what God told him to do. Genesis 12, right? Okay. Then he moved from there to the hill country east at Bethel and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and worshiped the Lord. Also, he leaves that country, showing that he trusts God and believes God, right? Takes God at his word, worships the Lord by building altars to sacrifice, and he believes God's promise that he's going to make him a great nation and he's going to give that land Canaan to his descendants. How is this different from Genesis 15? How is this different from Genesis 15? After these things, the Lord's message came to Abraham in a vision. Fear not, Abraham, I'm your shield and the one who will reward you in great abundance. But Abraham said, notice he says reward, right? Reward him. But Abraham said, O sovereign Lord, what will you give me since I continue to be childless and my heir is Eliezer of Damascus? Abraham added, since you have not given me a descendant, then look, one born in my house will be an heir. But look, the Lord's message came to him. This man will not be your heir, but instead a son who comes from your own body will be your heir. The Lord took him outside and said, gaze into the sky and count the stars if you're able to count them. Then he said to him, so will your descendants be. Abraham believed the Lord, and the Lord credited to him as righteousness. Wait, guys, I'm a little confused. Abraham believed God's promise that he would give him a physical heir from whom all his descendants would spring. Didn't he already have that faith here? The Lord appeared to Abraham and said, to your descendants I will give this land. I will make you into a great nation. But you got to leave your country relatives, your father's household, and go to the place I'll tell you to settle. Abraham left, just as the Lord had told him to do, and Lot with him. What's the difference in the faith? Did Abraham have the same faith in Genesis 15 that he had in 12? Isn't it the same promise? I will give this land to your descendants that you settled because you trusted me and obeyed me, and this is my reward. You got up and left and settled here by faith. And I'm going to make you a great nation. I'm going to give the land to your descendants because you obeyed me. Please tell me what in the world is the difference. Okay, you still don't get it? All right. Almost done. Okay, watch here. Hebrews 11:6, right? Okay. Fear not, Abraham. Genesis 15, right? Verse 1. I am your shield and the one who will reward you in great abundance. So, reward you, right? Reward you for what? Let's see. Hebrews 11:6. Now, without faith, it is impossible to please him. For the one who approaches God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. If you have faith that pleases God, he'll reward you. Okay, Genesis 15. Fear not, Abraham, I am your shield and one who will reward you in great abundance. So, in order for Abraham to be rewarded, he must have the faith that pleases God. Okay. Did he already have it here? When God had already told him, I'm going to make your descendants numerous, and you can't count them. Did he already tell him that in Genesis 12? This land that you now took me at my word and trusted me to come and settle in, I'm going to give it to them. Did he already have it in Genesis 12? Yeah. Because Hebrews 11:8-10 says he already had that faith to trust God, a faith that pleases God, to move God to reward him. Here it is, black and white in front of your eyes. Now, who's perverting the gospel? Who's perverting the gospel? Jay Dyer? Who perverted the gospel? Who is right? Who's perverting the gospel? Who is right? Was this an obliteration? Annihilation? Oh, wait. I am not even nowhere near done with Romans 4. I just wanted to get this guy to show you he's a joke. He won't debate anyone serious who will destroy him. He got destroyed in these debates by Trent Orr and Jimmy Akin. Jimmy Akin, particularly. Now watch. You want the nightmare? You really want to be, you want to see, and I'm going to explain to you why Paul didn't quote this. More to come in part 7, Lord willing. I'll do it sometime at the end of the week. I don't know if I'll do it tomorrow. Right? Let me see something. All right. Watch here. Get ready, guys. Get ready. Get ready to be blown away. Protestants hardly, if at all, quote this text. And if they do, they try to spin it because they don't know what to do with it. It's an embarrassment to their theology. Okay, watch it. Numbers 25, 1-13. The Israelites anger God by committing sexual orgies with shrine prostitutes and Moabite women in worship of Baal. God was angry and he sent the plague. When Israel lived in Shittim, the people began to commit sexual immorality with the daughters of Moab. These women invited the people to the sacrifice of their gods. The people ate and bowed down to their gods. When Israel joined themselves to Baal of Peor, this false god, the anger of the Lord flared up against Israel. Now watch. The Lord said to Moses, arrest all the leaders of the people, hang them up before the Lord in broad daylight. God is loving and compassionate, but when his wrath is unleashed, it's over with. So just then, one of the Israelites came and brought to his brothers a Midianite woman in the plain view of Moses. Front of Moses, front of the cloud. God's cloud is there. No shame. And the whole community of Israelites, while they're weeping at the entrance of tent meeting, when Phinehas, son of Eleazar, watch here. Phinehas, let me show you something. Hold on. Son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw it. He got up from among the assembly, took a javelin. I don't see Jesus in you. In his hand, went after the Israelite man, chased him into the tent, thrust him through. No mercy. Took the javelin, pierced him through the man into the woman's abdomen. When God saw that, the plague stopped. So the plague was stopped from the Israelites. Those that died in plague were 24,000. Now watch what God said because of what he did. Because what he did showed his love, zeal, faithfulness to God. The Lord spoke to Moses, Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, has turned my anger away from the Israelites when he manifested such zeal for my sake among them, so that I did not consume the Israelites in my zeal. Therefore announce, watch here, Uh-oh, Jimmy White. Watch how he tries to explain this away in his book, The God Who Justifies, a book I read when I used to think he was right. I'm going to give to him my covenant of peace. Wait, didn't Jamila say God made a covenant with Abraham in Genesis 15? Which he did. Watch how this is going to embarrass him. You ready? I'm going to give to him my covenant of peace, so be to him and his descendants after him a covenant of permanent priesthood. What he did, I'm not going to make a covenant. All the descendants from him will serve as priests because he has been zealous for his God and he's made atonement for the Israelites. Now watch the destruction of Martin Luther and James White and Anthony Rogers, Matt Slick. God makes a covenant. You and I, this is my covenant with you, Phinehas. Your descendants will be the ones who will serve as priests. Now watch why I'm showing you this. Because when we go back to Abraham, but look, the Lord's message came to him. This man will not be your heir, but instead, watch here, a son who comes from your own body will be your heir. The Lord took him outside and said, gaze into the sky and count the stars, if you're able to count them. Then he said to him, so will your descendants be. Notice, two people, Abraham, Phinehas. God makes a promise to bless their descendants. Abraham believed the Lord, and the Lord credited him as righteous. Watch, get ready to be blown away. I swear you're going to be blown away if you haven't heard this before. The Lord said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out from Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess. But Abraham said, O sovereign Lord, but by what can I know that I am to possess it? How am I going to know you're going to give me this land? The Lord said to him, take for me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. So now he's going to cut a covenant. Covenant must be ratified by blood, where you bind yourselves to each other to do what the covenant stipulates. Otherwise, God will curse you if you fail. So Abraham took all these for him, then cut them into two, and placed each half opposite the other, but he did not cut the birds in half. So he just brought the birds. When birds of prey came down to the carcasses, Abraham drove them away. Now, any good note will tell you what God is doing here. When the sun went down, Abraham fell sound asleep, and great terror overwhelmed him because God's presence, his face, right, came as smoke. To do what? Then the Lord said to Abraham, know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign country. They will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. But I will execute judgment on the nation that they will serve. Afterward, they will come out with many possessions. But as for you, you go to your ancestors. You're going to die. You're not going to see this. In peace. And you're going to be in a state of peace in the realm of the dead. No torment. Because you're safe and secure. And be buried at a good old age. In the fourth generation, 400 years later, your descendants will return. For the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its limit. Now, what did God do? Covenants must be ratified by a blood sacrifice. So you're going to kill an animal, shed the blood, right? And say, may God do to me what we did to these animals and birds if we failed to keep the covenant. But now notice who ends up consuming the sacrifices and walking in the midst of the sacrifices. God. When the sun had gone down and it was dark, a smoking fire pot with a flaming torch passed. That was God's presence appearing as smoking fire between the animal parts. That day the Lord cut a covenant with Abraham. To your descendants I give this land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates River, the land of the Kenites, Kenizzites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites. Notice only the smoking fire pot, right, passed between the animals. That was God's presence. And Abraham was seeing that God, when he walked over the sacrifice, passed over them, this was God's way of assuring him, I am binding myself to this covenant. I am swearing by myself to do what I just promised to you. What's my promise? You're going to die and go to the realm of the dead in peace. You won't be tormented because you're eternally secure through your faithfulness in me. But long after you're dead, 400 years later, I'm going to bless your descendants and make them inherit this land that you live as a stranger. Okay, now watch. How does this tie in with Phineas? I swear we're done right now. So your descendants will be right. What did God say to Phineas? Get ready. Watch here. To prove the Catholics, Orthodox have always been right. I am going to give to him Phineas for what he did. What he did. Killed this Israelite and the Moabitess for committing idolatry and sexual morality, a sex act, as a way of worshiping Baal. Because pagan religions are littered with shrine prostitutes, male prostitutes that will engage in sexual orgies with the worshipers as a way of honoring the gods and goddesses, because their gods and goddesses were known to be perverts or sexually immoral deviants. Okay, now watch here. Get ready. We're almost done. Get ready. Athir, wait, you hadn't seen nothing yet. I'm going to give to him my covenant peace, so will be to him and his descendants after him. See, just like Abraham, I'm going to bless his descendants by making them my permanent priests as long as the Mosaic law is intact. Why? Because he's been zealous for his God. And by killing them, their death, dying for their sin, atoned so that God would spare the rest of the Israelites. Okay. Abraham believed God, and God swore to bless his descendants and make them too numerous, right? For what does the scripture say? Abraham believed God and was credited to him as righteousness. Guys, get ready. Watch this. Psalm 106, 30, 31. Phinehas took a stand and intervened, and the plague subsided. This was credited to Phinehas as a righteous act for all generations to come. The exact same words, Abraham believed God and was credited to him as righteousness, is now said of Phinehas for what he did. He was declared and made righteous by what he did. Watch this. Now let's put them back to back. And the Greek is virtually identical. Let me show you. But Phinehas stood up and intervened, and the plague was checked. This was credited to him as righteousness for endless generations to come. Abraham believed the Lord, and he credited to him as righteousness. Damn, Gina. What Phinehas did was credited to him as righteousness, and what Abraham believed was credited to him as righteousness. How come Protestants don't quote this? How come Protestants don't quote this? The Greek is identical. Hebrew is similar. Same. How come they don't quote this? You see it? You caught it? Both Abraham, Phinehas were credited with righteousness. God made a covenant with both. To one, he said, your descendants will inherit the land that you're a stranger in. To other, from your line, your descendants will arise priests to serve before me. One was credited because of faith, which I'll show you is faithfulness. The other was credited as being righteous for what he did. Now, here's a better question. Why do you think Paul did not quote Psalm 106, 30, 31? Can anyone tell me? Why do you think Paul didn't quote Psalm 106, 30, 31? Perhaps, Seraph. Anyone have an idea? Here's where you're going to see why Paul does what he does. Why do you think Paul doesn't quote this? No, why didn't Paul quote Psalm 106, 30, 31? So we can wrap it up, so we can be done. Yeah, Daniela, I want to kiss your head. Yes, Pedro. If Paul quoted this, there was only proof the Judaizers' point. They'll say, Paul, see? Paul, see? You got to keep the law of Moses. See? It would have defeated Paul's purpose. So what did Paul do? I'm going to do you one better. So Phinehas was declared and made righteous because of his zeal for the law of Moses. However, Abraham was also declared and made righteous because of his zeal for the Lord, even before the law of Moses, before circumcision. I buried you. You didn't bury me. Because Judaizers, if being made righteous and declared righteous only comes from the law of Moses, and you want to quote this to me, Phinehas, I'm going to now show you Abraham was made and declared righteous without the law of Moses. Checkmate. That's why. Athir, are you going live now? That's why. You see the brilliance of Paul, how much wisdom he had, and how spirit-filled he was. May the same spirit that filled him fill us to interpret Scripture the way he did. And once you interpret the way he did, you'll leave Protestantism. You'll leave Protestantism. Exactly, Manuel. Maga, you're great. You got it. Shout out to my MAGA crowd. Sword, Jordan, Manuel, right? Read the Gospels, Echo, TK, D-Man, Travis, Derek. God bless you all. We're done. We're done. Have you ever heard this level of in-depth, thorough breakdown of the primary passages that these butchers like Nita Facelift and Ruslan Feathers and JP Slut and Jamila White, Anthony Rogers, Matt Slick, right? So guys, with next, head out to Divine Mercy Apologetics. King Sylph is going to be showing you some filthy, wicked, shameful hadith of Muhammad. So go there. We're done. You guys can start your stream earlier, brother, because I'm done.